Good evening, all, and thank you for tuning in to tonight's story. If you enjoy it, please remember to subscribe and like the video so we can continue bringing you more horror stories. Now, without further ado, take a deep breath and relax as we take a journey through the night. I used to pray for sleep. Now I beg to stay awake. The nightmares started small. Shadows moving where they shouldn't, whispers just below hearing. Nothing worse than a childhood fear of the dark, the kind of thing I could shake off when I woke up. But they got worse. They became real. Not in the way dreams feel real while you're in them, but in the way they don't fade when you wake. I would feel fingernails drag down my arms hours after I left the dream. I would taste blood in my mouth from biting my tongue in the places I had no mouth to scream. I would wake with my ribs aching, the ghost of hands still wrapped around them. I started avoiding sleep. At first it was just small things. Coffee before bed, keeping the lights on, letting the TV run in the background. But soon it wasn't enough, because something noticed, and it started watching me. I first saw it 3 months ago. I had woken up stiff and frozen, my body locked in place. The familiar paralysis settled over me like a second skin, heavy and unmovable. But this time, I wasn't alone. It crouched in the corner of my bedroom, between the dresser and the door. A shape too large to fit in the space it occupied, its body compressed, folded in ways I didn't understand. Its eyes gleamed, not red, not glowing, just open, watching. It didn't move, didn't breathe. I wanted to scream, to thrash, to pull myself out of the moment, but I couldn't. I just stared, and it stared back. Then it smiled. The paralysis broke. I gasped, jerking upright, shaking so hard my teeth clattered. The room was empty, but I knew. I felt it. It hadn't left. It was waiting. For months, the routine never changed. I would wake up, trapped. It would be there, crouched in the dark, silent, watching, waiting for something I didn't want to know. The nightmares never stopped. If anything, they grew worse. I woke gasping, sobbing, unable to shake the things I had seen. People I loved, twisted apart into shapes they shouldn't be. Mouths stretched too wide, gaping with no sound. Corridors that folded inward as I ran, dragging me into the walls, forcing me through places no body should fit. I was breaking. I knew that. But I also knew one other thing. The thing in my room had never hurt me. It had never moved closer, never reached out, never dragged me back into the dreams. It just watched. That's when I realized it wasn't there to hurt me. It was there to see how much I could take. I sat up in bed, the sheets damp with sweat. I didn't bother turning on the light. I knew it was there. It always was. My breath shook. My hands curled in my lap. I swallowed back the terror, the instinct screaming at me to never speak to it. And then softly I whispered, "Keep me awake." For the first time it moved, not much, not fast, just unfolding. Limbs stretching, filling the space that never should have fit them. It rose to its full height, and then slowly it took a step forward. It was a mistake. I realized that the moment the shadows shifted and the air grew thick, not heavy, not humid, thick, like liquid pressing against my skin. My heart pounded, but I forced myself still. It loomed at the edge of my bed, I had never seen it so close. The details were hazy, blurred, shifting between shapes. Tall, too tall, arms too long, a face that was not a face but the suggestion of one, carved into darkness. It reached for me, not fast, not a lunge, not an attack. A slow, deliberate stretch. Fingertips brushed my forehead, and then I was awake. For the first time in months, I didn't dream. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt watched. I was never alone anymore. Even during the day, I caught glimpses, reflections that didn't match my movements, shadows stretching in places where no light should cast them. The exhaustion didn't leave. I had thought the dreams were what drained me, but now it was something else. Every night I stayed awake longer. Every night it reached for me again. And every night the room grew darker, not dim, not shadowed, dark. Like the walls were peeling back to reveal something deeper beneath them. Like I was being pulled into something else. I couldn't move anymore. I had gone 6 days without sleep. My hands trembled, my eyes blurred. Every breath felt like pulling air through soaked cotton. I felt stretched thin. The room pulsed, like it was breathing. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart slow, sluggish. The light in the hallway was distant now, like the house had grown longer, like I had slipped farther away from the world I knew. The air rippled. I didn't look at it. Didn't have to. It was closer than ever. The floor shifted under its weight. A hand curled over my shoulder, not a grip, not a restraint, just resting there. Heavy, cold, real. And then, "Come with me," I exhaled. Somewhere deep inside me, I knew I wasn't in my house anymore. Not really. The walls, the bed, the air I breathed, they weren't mine. They had become his. Or maybe they always had been. I felt myself lean forward, letting go, letting it take me, because I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know if I would ever wake up. The first time I hear it, I think it's just my imagination. A long, slow breath somewhere in the dark of my room. Not my own. Not the old pipe shifting in the walls. Something else. I sit up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. My bedroom is silent now, except for the hum of my fan and the ticking of the clock. The shadows look normal, the furniture sitting where it always has. My dresser by the window, my desk against the far wall, my closet door cracked just an inch. Nothing is out of place. I shake my head, exhale through my nose. Maybe I dreamed it. Maybe I half woke up and brought a sound back with me. I lie back down. The moment I close my eyes, inhale, exhale, I bolt upright, heart slamming against my ribs. It's close. Somewhere in the room, something is breathing. I don't move. I listen. The air feels thicker now, heavier on my skin. I squint into the dark, willing my eyes to adjust faster. My phone is right there, just inches away on my nightstand. If I can grab it, turn on the flashlight. Inhale, exhale. Goosebumps crawl up my arms. It's right next to me. My hand shakes as I reach for my phone. My fingers barely graze the screen before the breath comes again. Closer, warmer, almost on my face. I snatch my phone up, thumb smashing the flashlight icon. The room floods with light. Nothing. The floor is empty. My closet door still sits open an inch, just as I left it. The air is quiet. I sit there, chest heaving, throat dry. I let out a shaky laugh, dragging a hand through my hair. No one is here. The next night, I tell myself I imagined it. I go to bed later, make sure I'm exhausted enough to pass out the second my head hits the pillow. But the moment sleep drags me under, I feel it. The change in the air, the weight of something unseen pressing against my room. The breath comes softer this time, like it's trying not to wake me. Inhale, exhale, a sigh sliding from unseen lips. I go rigid beneath my blankets, forcing myself still. I can't tell where it is. Is it by the window? The closet? Right beside me? I grip my phone under the covers. I shouldn't move, but I do. Light bursts from my screen, washing over my room. Again, nothing. It happens every night after that. Always the same? The moment I start slipping into sleep, it starts breathing. Deep, slow inhales. Long, drawn-out exhales. I stop turning on the light. It doesn't matter. Nothing is ever there. But the feeling stays. I know it's in the room with me. I feel it watching. It's patient. So patient. It never touches me, never moves, just waits. A week passes. I sleep in the daytime now. Stay up all night, eyes locked on the ceiling, ears straining for that first breath. One night, I feel it before I hear it. A shift in the room, a tightness in the air. Then, inhale, exhale. I stare at the ceiling, refuse to move. I let it breathe. Let it sit there in the dark. I count the seconds between each breath. 6, sometimes 7, never more than 10. Then I see it, the closet door, that inch-wide gap. It's open wider now. I don't look away. I can't. A full minute passes, maybe longer. Then, soft as a whisper, the closet door moves. Not much, just half an inch. I don't breathe. The air is ice against my skin. The next exhale drifts from inside the closet. I don't go near the closet again. I leave it as it is, open just enough that I can see the dark space inside. I stop sleeping entirely. Naps on the couch, yes. Dozing off in the early morning when the sun is out. But never in my room, never in the dark, not with it still watching me. Then one night, exhaustion wins. I don't mean to sleep. I blink, and the next thing I know, I'm sinking, floating on the edge of unconsciousness. And it knows. The breath slides closer. Inhale, exhale, right against my ear. I jolt awake. For the first time, the breathing doesn't stop. I reach for my phone. But the moment I move, the bed shifts. Something presses down beside me. The mattress dips. A weight settles right next to my body. I don't move. I don't scream. I just listen. The breath is so close now, and this time, when I exhale, it exhales with me. I stay awake until sunrise. The moment light spills through my window, the pressure lifts. The closet door sits open wider than before. I get up, hands shaking, and push it shut. I sit back on the bed. Wait. The air doesn't change. The breath doesn't return. Maybe it's gone. Maybe closing the door was enough. I let out a slow, heavy sigh. Then from behind the closet door, it sighs back. I have always checked under my bed before sleeping. It started when I was a kid, long after my parents stopped tucking me in. They would flip the light off, shut the door, and leave me alone with the darkness. But I never truly felt alone. The space under my bed seemed deep, as if it stretched beyond the floorboards, beyond the walls. Most nights, nothing happened. Most nights I found dust, a lost sock, Maybe an old book I had knocked off my nightstand. It was late. I had stayed up reading, my bedside lamp casting soft golden light across the room. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows, sending tree branches scraping against the house. When my eyes grew heavy, I set my book down and leaned over the side of my bed. My fingers reached for the comfort of the hardwood floor, a familiar ritual. Only this time, something touched me first, not a bump, not a shift of air. A touch, software dry, a grazing of skin against skin. I jerked my hand back, heart slamming in my chest, my breath caught in my throat. The light. I needed light. Fumbling, I grabbed my phone and switched on the flashlight, angling it at the space below. Nothing. Just dust and a few stray pieces of lint. I held my breath, my pulse thudding in my ears. Had I imagined it? A trick of exhaustion, maybe? Then, a whisper of movement. Not visible, not loud, but there. A shift in the air, like someone exhaling softly in the dark. I didn't sleep that night. Morning came, but the unease didn't leave me. I spent the day convincing myself that nothing had been there. A moment of fatigue, a dream creeping into wakefulness. Still, when night came, I hesitated before getting into bed. I told myself I was being foolish. I reached down again, hand trembling slightly, brushing my fingertips against the floor. Nothing touched me this time. Relief flooded my chest. I let out a slow breath and settled beneath the covers, closing my eyes. Sleep came fast, and so did the dream. I was in my room in bed, staring at the ceiling, but I couldn't move. My limbs felt pinned, heavy, as if something was holding them down. Then from beneath me, a scratching, fingernails dragging across the floorboards, slow, deliberate, circling the bed. I wanted to turn my head to look, but I couldn't. Then the whisper came, software dry, right against my ear. I like when you reach for me. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. The room was silent. My breath came in quick, uneven gulps. I didn't check under the bed that night. The next few nights, I kept my hands tucked close to my chest. I didn't reach down, didn't even let my feet dangle over the edge. But it didn't matter. It started moving when I was awake. A creak beneath me, a shift of weight. The feeling of being watched through the thin layer of my mattress. The sound of breathing that wasn't mine. One night I heard it shift closer. The soft press of a palm against the underside of the bed. A gentle, expectant touch. It was waiting. I should have left. Should have packed a bag, slept on the couch, burned the bed frame. But I didn't. Instead, I spoke to it. It happened without thinking. A single, whispered sentence into the dark. What do you want? The silence stretched. Then from below, a slow, deliberate tap against the floor, like a finger gently rapping against wood. Once, twice, 3 times. A response. I barely breathed. My skin felt tight, my stomach in knots. I wanted to ask again, but I didn't. I pulled the blanket over my head, curled into myself like a child, and I waited for morning. I should have never acknowledged it. The next night, it touched me again. I woke up to something pressing against my back. Not firm, not a grip, a soft, lingering touch. Fingers resting against my spine. I froze. My mouth went dry. My hands clenched into the sheets. The touch stayed. Then, as if sensing my fear, it moved, slow, exploring, fingertips grazing up my back, trailing across my ribs. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself still. Then it withdrew, a soft drag of skin against skin, a final brush of fingers as it slipped away beneath the bed. I didn't move again until sunlight touched my window. By the time the next night came, I knew what was happening. It wasn't just watching, it was learning. It had been waiting, patient in the dark, waiting for me to notice it, and now it wanted more. I stayed awake as long as I could. Hours passed. The room grew colder, the silence stretching. Then near dawn, I felt it again. A shift, a presence, the whisper of movement. But this time, it didn't touch me. Not at first. This time, it reached for my hand. I was lying on my side, my arm draped over the edge of the mattress. I didn't realize my mistake until it was too late. A dry, thin hand curled around my wrist. A grip stronger than before. Not a caress, not an invitation, a pull. I yanked back with all my strength, heart slamming against my ribs. For a moment it held on. The skin beneath its fingers burned with cold. Then after a breathless second, it let go. I scrambled back, chest heaving, the blankets tangling around me. My wrist throbbed. I grabbed my phone, fumbling to turn on the light. The glow filled the room. Nothing was there. But when I looked at my wrist, the marks were still there. Thin, pale fingerprints pressed deep into my skin. I knew I couldn't stay. I had spent too many nights trapped in the same cycle. Waiting, listening, letting it wait for me. I packed a bag, threw on a jacket, and made for the door. But then, a whisper, not from under the bed, from behind me. "Don't go!" I didn't turn around. I didn't acknowledge it. I stepped outside, slamming the door behind me. The second I was out, the air felt lighter. The tightness in my chest faded. I walked down the street, gripping my keys so hard they cut into my palm. I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because I knew the door was still open, and in the darkness beyond, something was waiting. Lena never believed in ghosts, not in the way some people did anyway. No Ouija boards, no seances, no superstition creeping into her thoughts late at night. If something moved in the house, it had an explanation. A draft, bad wiring, the old bones of the place settling into themselves. But when her little brother started talking about the whispering man, she felt something she couldn't quite explain. Not fear, not at first, just unease. It started 3 weeks after they moved into the house on Holloway Lane, a creaky two-story with peeling blue paint, a yard wild with weeds, and a history the realtor had skimmed over. James was 5, a quiet kid, a little shy, the kind who clung to her leg in new places but laughed too loud at cartoons. He didn't have imaginary friends, didn't make up stories. That's why when he tugged on Lena's sleeve at breakfast and said, "He talks to me at night," she set her spoon down. "Who does?" James hesitated, pushing eggs around his plate. The whispering man. A chill traced down Lena's spine. She glanced at their mother, but she was too busy scrolling on her phone to notice. "What whispering man?" Lena asked carefully. James shrugged. "I don't know. He stays in the corner." That night she checked his room. The corner was empty. James didn't talk about him again for a while. Lena thought maybe it was a passing thing, a dream, a trick of the dark. Kids saw things adults didn't, shapes in the shadows, faces in the folds of blankets. Then one night, Lena woke to the sound of whispers, Soft, slithering words drifting through the walls. Her heart jumped into her throat. She sat up, pulse hammering, ears straining. James. The sound came from his room. She slipped out of bed, bare feet silent against the floor. The hallway stretched dark before her, lit only by the faint blue glow of James's nightlight. His door was open a crack. She pushed it wider. James sat on the edge of his bed, back facing her, shoulders stiff. His little hands clutched the blanket in his lap. And in the farthest corner of the room, a shadow shifted. Lena's breath caught. For a second, just a second, she swore she saw a figure folded deep into the corner, limbs stretched long, body pressed into the darkness like it belonged there. Then it was gone. James turned. His face was pale, eyes too wide. "James," Lena whispered, stepping inside. "Who were you talking to?" His lip trembled. "We were playing a game." Lena didn't want to know. Every cell in her body screamed at her to take James, to run, to never set foot in this house again. But she asked anyway. "What game?" James swallowed hard. His little fingers twisted in the blanket. "He whispers first," he murmured. "Then I have to whisper back. If I stop, he gets closer." Lena's stomach turned. She knelt beside him, brushing his hair from his forehead. "You don't have to play," she said, voice tight. James's head shook, frantic. "I do." "Why?" His gaze flicked to the corner. He doesn't like when people break the rules. Lena started sleeping in James's room. She told herself it was to make him feel better, but the truth settled deep in her gut like sickness. Something was in the house with them. She felt it every night. The air pressed thick against her chest like the weight of unseen eyes. The whispers came back, just out of reach. A hush of words she couldn't understand. James never answered when she was awake, but the moment sleep dragged her under, she would wake to the sound of his voice, whispering back. She stopped asking what it said. She didn't want to know. One night, James fell asleep early. Lena lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling. The house creaked. The wind howled through the trees outside. Then, a breath, not James's, not hers, something else. Lena's skin prickled. The whisper curled through the dark. Software, low, right against her ear. "Your turn." Ice stabbed into her veins. The rules, the game. She had heard it. She had to answer. Her lips trembled. "No." The whisper came again. "Your turn." A weight pressed onto the bed, like something was crawling up from the foot of it. The blanket tightened around her legs. James stirred beside her, but he didn't wake. Lena squeezed her eyes shut. She could feel it now, right beside her. Cold breath against her cheek, a voice sliding through her skull. "You have to play." Lena ran. She grabbed James, tore from the bed, sprinted for the door. The whispers exploded. Louder now, furious. The air shook. The walls groaned. James screamed. The door slammed shut. Lena clawed at the knob. It wouldn't turn. A shadow stretched across the ceiling, limbs pulling long, face warping into a gaping hole of a mouth, whispering faster, faster, faster. James sobbed into her shoulder. Then, silence. Lena barely breathed. The air settled. The whispers stopped, and the door creaked open on its own. They left that night, packed bags, ran barefoot into the car, never looked back. Their mother didn't ask questions. Maybe she had heard it too. Maybe she didn't need to. Lena made James sleep in her room at the new house. She locked the closet, kept a light on. The whisper never came again. James stopped talking about the game. Years passed. They grew up. The house on Holloway Lane stood empty. And then, one night, years later, Lena woke to the sound of a whisper in the dark, software, low, right against her ear. Your turn.